Hello, everyone. So what we're going to do is we have 1 hour, so that's not too much time, but also it's enough time to just give you a really quick overview so that you can dive in those latest features with Figma. By the way, I have a new microphone. It's a very great microphone. I hope I set it up the right way. If you ever don't hear me, then please give me a shout and we go back to this old little one here. So you should have this document, and if not, there will be, I think someone's posting that into the chat again. And here you can also find a link to download the file. You can also just find the file on my Figma community. So that is if you type in, sorry, see it better like this. If you type in figma.com/@moonlearning, that's just any free files and things I made. And you can see the latest one I uploaded. There is the file. So this is the exact same file that I'm going to show you. You don't need that file. It's just in case you want to go through everything, through something like after the session, and you can jump in here. But you're probably not going to have time to follow along. So it makes more sense if you just listen to me, and then later on you can, however, play around with that. And I think there's a video recording, so you can also watch that at the same time and stop it. So yeah, you just click on here, and then what it does, it copies. If you go open in Figma, it's going to copy a file for you in your local Figma file. The other thing is that here in the documents, you have down here collaborative notes. So if you click on here, then it's going to open this one. And the best thing is if you have questions, I'm not sure how much time we want to have, but if you just put them on here, if you see a question of someone else, you can just add a little plus if that's something relevant to you. And then I'm going to look at this like more when we've done the whole thing. So because we have such little amount of time, I'd rather want to go through the chunks, and then later you can also switch on your microphones, but I would rather like just run through it and respect everybody's time. But don't worry, I'm going to be here for some questions after that. Okay, so let's jump in. So let me give you a little intro. So that's the same as you see in your file. So I'm Christine, and I run an online, I'm going to take this one off here. And I run an online learning platform called Moon Learning. And I also have a book called The Solo IO, which is about building your own products. So Moon Learning is mainly about Figma courses, UI, UX design, and then I partner a lot of the time with the lovely smashing conferences that you see here, doing these little free events. And we also have a larger in-depth workshop coming up if that's of your interest. That is just, there are some links if you're interested in these. Also make sure that you follow me. I'm mainly on LinkedIn these days, and there's tips and tricks and any like sort of events, free or paid or whatever you're after, coming up. I usually post them on LinkedIn, and I'm trying to be a little better with my newsletter. So also sign into that one. And I also send you articles and things like that that are relevant to all of these things that you're going to see that we're going to discuss today. So the thing that we want to do today is that 2 weeks ago, there is always a large conference called Config in San Francisco, where Figma releases the latest features for the year. And this year there was a lot happening there. And some of these things, they will happen in your design file. So if you're working with Figma, then you will see changes. One is grid, so that there's a change in auto layout that I'm going to show you. And this is actually the one that seems very small, well, a little small thing changed, but it's under the hood what you're going to see. It's a huge change, and it's getting us so much closer to, as designers, aligning better with development. So this is something I feel very strongly about. I'm very excited about. There's another feature, draw, which is very similar to if you used Illustrator. So Figma getting closer to that, letting you draw, letting you create icons. So I'm going to just cover that quickly because there's some nice little hidden things that you might have missed that I think are great to know. And then I want to jump into another one which I really, really enjoy, which is sites. So that is that you can directly from Figma, you can publish your own website. So this is really great if you're having a small standalone website, your portfolio website, a promo site for a product that you're building, something like that, then this is really, really fantastic. I'm also really excited about this one. There is more things. There is Make. We're not covering Make today. If we have a little bit of time, we can add a prompt. I have access to Make, and we can see what happens. But the thing is that it hasn't rolled out fully. It's still very much, I'm not sure if it's in beta, it's in closed beta or even in alpha still. And so not everybody has access. If you already do, you're lucky, you can just play with it, but it's going to be rolled out bit by bit. So this is sort of the least developed out of all these products. And there's another one called Buzz, and this is a little more targeted towards if you're working in marketing and you're creating assets. So I'm also not covering this because this is usually not the audience here, but it's a really great tool. If you want some more info about these, I'm also happy to share some more links. Okay, so let's jump in right away. So the thing that I am most excited about, besides sites, it's actually this one here, and this is this little addition to our auto layout. So let's first understand what auto layout is really quickly. So what auto layout is for is that when we resize our elements, which later are probably going to be components or instances, then you can see that they nicely adapt to change in size, to change of content, and we can create our single components like this, but they're really useful because you can also nest and group. So you can create things like this. And you're going to see that your whole pages are probably going to be set up like this. So you're going to have whole pages that respond to changing size. This is also usually the most difficult feature to understand in Figma, where everything else is quite logic if you work with components. Usually, I mean, variables, usually people struggle a little bit with, but auto layout is really the one where people don't want to dig in, they find it tricky. And there is unfortunately bad news. If you've been avoiding auto layout for now, you have to get to it. And once we get to sites, you're going to see why. But the good news is it's not as difficult once you understand what's happening behind it. So auto layout now looks like this. And the important part, I think, is to break it down in order to understand it. So the first part, this is just your default. So like nothing is happening here. Then we have the second part, and this is a one-dimensional auto layout. And don't worry, we're going to go through this in a second. And that is pretty close to something called CSS Flexbox. And that's also the auto layout as you knew it before. So if you've been using auto layout until now, then these two little buttons, it's exactly the same. There was no change. The new thing that happened is this one over here. And this allows us to create two-dimensional sort of grid-like development. So that's the new development in our auto layout menu, and it just looks a little different. So let's jump through these three. So whenever you look at this menu, try to understand it in parts of 3, or at least parts of 2, as this is really just a default setting. So let's have a look. I'm just going to switch on my menu here. And again, later you can try this out in your own file as well. So you can see here, currently we have default. It's just a screenshot. So you have this here. By the way, this says directions because I took this from an earlier version. You probably don't see these little labels. I find it really useful to have them, especially with new features. And you can switch them on the top where you see your zoom settings. There you see property labels. So you can switch them on and off. So you have something like this, and if you switch it on, then I find that especially if you're new to some features, it really helps you to understand what they do. So a little tip on the side. So with this, we literally just have our design set and we can move it around. Nothing happens, right? It's like this, and you also see this here is switched off. This is where you switch on auto layout, which I have to say I find a little redundant, as you'll see in a minute why. Then we have this middle bit. So this is, as I said, as we knew it before. So let's switch that on. So you can see here, this is now a vertical alignment, or we have a horizontal alignment. And then what we have in this menu, you can see the alignment, so which direction it stacks. Then for now, we're going to send this to hug and hug because we don't have time to go into the specifics of auto layout. But what is interesting is we have these gaps, so you can change them on here. Then we have our padding, so that is left and right, and we have our alignment. And if we change that for the horizontal one, like this, so have a little new space here, then everything is exactly the same except that for vertical alignment is horizontal. What you're going to see appear in this one, though, is this little button, and that's the wrap button. So if we click the wrap, then you can see that this is now wrapping into a new line. So it behaves really nicely with changes. And I'm going to get to this, why this is relevant, once we dive a little deeper. Now, the thing we're interested in is this one, the new one. So the 2 dimensions, the CSS grid. And it works the same. You just click on this last little one, and then you're going to get this sort of thing where, I hope you see that clearly, where you're going to have these little cells. Actually, let me show you from here because sometimes it works a bit. shuffles a bit strangely. You can see now it gave me 3 because there were 3 in a row. So what you can do here, you can click on this little new grid feature, and then you have this lovely preview, and so you can change it. If you wanted the same view that I showed you earlier with just 4 of them here, then you first need to move this. So you just grab this and you can move it into the cells, and now you could change this, and you could have the cells need to be empty that you can get rid of them. So you can create these nice little, let's go over here. So you can create these nice little cells and you can move them freely. As you resize, then everything is going to change with that. So that is the basic of how this new menu works. So the thing you might, when you look at it first, it seems pretty obvious, but it gets a little more tricky once you start creating more complex elements. And you might start wondering, but when do I use which one? Because if I can wrap, when would I use this wrap feature? And when would I use this grid feature? Now, this is from Figma's presentation. And as you might have noticed, I'm a big Figma fan. Usually I agree with most that they say. But this one here, actually, I don't fully agree with how they explain this, because what they told us is they said, you use the grid instead of the one-dimensional layout as we knew it, to help you have more control. I'm all aligned with this, to build components and containers, all fine. But this down here, it says, so when do you really use it? So they say use grid when auto layout starts to feel limiting or overly nested for your layout needs. And I don't really agree with it, because I think that falls a little short, and that means that you don't really understand what is one or the other. And just when things get too complicated and you have a bit of a feel that it might work, then you just use the other one. And there is way more to it. And also the way Figma built it, there is way more to it. And by the way, there's always the links to the files. It's a really, really great file. Because as you saw here, I put that it's not exactly a reflection of CSS Flexbox and CSS Grid, but it gets really close, because everything in Figma, components, variables, and also layout, it's all based on CSS principles, because it's a UI tool for UI design. So we're always trying to get close to these things. So let's have a look here. What does that mean? So if we have this alignment, then if we're aligning, so what Flexbox does basically, it stacks it one below the other. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, the interesting part, and where you might get confused, is this part here. So the wrapping. So you might say, but if I wrap it now, then I can create something like this, right? I can, why would I use this and why would I use the grid? Now, it's important to understand that this behavior in these first two, that's based on Flexbox. And what Flexbox does, if you think of it like beads on a string, it puts one element after the other, right? So if I change this, if I change this just to high, let's see if it has enough space, or if I make this longer, then you can see that it's gonna like push it to the next row. So what it does, it looks in one direction and then it just puts them after one another. Now, it doesn't care about what's happening up here. It doesn't care whether there is an element happening here. It just goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It just goes as you bring them along. So if you want something like this, then auto layout as you knew it, and you probably noticed that in the past, it wasn't enough. It just doesn't do that. It doesn't give you this control. And so this is two different ways of looking at layout and layouting elements when there's no more space, or when you're looking at a larger area. And it's very important to understand this difference, because there isn't one better or one worse. They just create a different effect. You have a different outcome. And for different elements in your design, you're going to need these different ways to work with. So either a one dimension or a two dimension where you can control the whole overview. So it is like this, basically. When you're generally working, then your components, you're gonna find that a lot of the time you're fine with one dimensions. You can see here what this does. This is stacking right below each other. And you can see here, I'm going to talk more about nesting in a minute, that we're nesting this inside of here. So we have one direction and then another one direction. So that works really well. And a lot of the time you're going to find that if you're creating an overall layout, something a little more complex, then you might, or like cards is a good example, cards next to each other, then you might want to use a grid to place that in. You can combine them nicely and there is no set rules. You could also create your components, if it makes sense, with CSS Grid in code. That is happening all the time. So you might see, let me just jump over here. So you might see something completely built in elements in Flexbox sitting inside a CSS grid. You might see some elements of your page being Flexbox, some others being CSS grid, or you might also see components in CSS grid. It's really up to you. The important part is that you understand what these are and how they work, and you have to understand a little bit of code. What's important to understand when we use this is the nesting. So the thing that usually happens with auto layout, you made your lovely design, you select your design, and then you click boom, auto layout, and then this happens. Because what it does is this. Everything is on the same hierarchy. It's going to apply the same distance between all of this. And the more you understand about auto layout, I'm just going to show you a few more resources in a minute, then it's just going to stack it like this. So in order to really use this feature, what you need to do is you need to nest these things. And when you're nesting, then you're having these little child elements that you can then control as sort of own little auto layouts and then the differences in between. So it's very important to always understand this relationship between the parent and the children in order to control your layouts. And this is going to be more difficult, probably, if you're a designer, if you don't have a development background, to understand rather than just jumping in the grid. But something like this, you would not be solving nicely with a grid. So you have to understand also how these things would be coded. Now, as we only have a little time, and auto layout is not our main thing, but as I said, you can't run away from it any longer. I added a few resources. So here is an in-depth course. There is an article. This is a free article to understand all of this. And then, of course, if you want to come to our session, there's a whole day dedicated to it, and we'll go into all the details. So I would really recommend that have a look, whether you want to dedicate a lot of time or little time, but try to wrap your head around this as a designer because it's going to make a difference. Now, the thing we're here for is we want to understand the grid. And as I said, the grid is actually for designers much more intuitive than the Flexbox that we just talked about. So our grid, the thing is though, what we need to understand as designers, we're used to this sort of grid. When we say grid to a designer, we think of columns, we call them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever, how many we have and we want. And then we're going to place our items onto these columns. And this is how we create our design in our mind. Now we also have that in Figma, and that is still here. So it's still down here. They renamed it. It's called a layout guide. So you'll see it's not called a grid anymore. It's a guide. And that's exactly how you should see that. If we jump to dev mode, this is not going to turn up. You don't see that sort of grid system, these columns in the background. It's really just something that Figma sees now as something that is a guideline when you're designing. If you want the code-like representation of a grid, then you need to understand that in code, they don't look, well, they do if you use Bootstrap or something, but in modern CSS, it doesn't look like this. What it looks like is rather than having these columns here, we have grid lines. So we have a line, and they start at 1, by the way, not at 0, at 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that creates these grid cells. And in these grid cells, we can place our items. Per default, if we would just add them, just as in Figma, they just added like this in CSS. And now we can move these items because it's like a coordinate system. It's like a bit of like a chessboard, basically. So you can say, I want you to move here, I want you to move up there. And you can also span them across different cells. So you can make them overlap, you can create overall designs. So they're giving you much more of a layout power to look at. You can add margin and paddings to them. And what you can also do is you can fix them. So you don't have the same size as you had with this approach here. We always have the same, all the columns are the same. With the CSS grid and a new Figma grid, we don't have this. Our columns, they can be different sizes. And this is how this works in code as well. So for example, you could fix this. Let me see if my little demo works. So what you can do is you let's say we have this one fixed, and when we have this one's more fluid, so you can do stuff like this, that you can fix elements, you can have some, and that you can only do in code. Actually, some of them are larger and some of them are smaller. So it's more like this little chessboard that you create. Now, Figma isn't code, so a lot of the stuff we're coming pretty close. We're going to look at the Figma grid in more detail now, but some of the things are just not going to be the same, like some units. We don't have different fractional units, which is something you have if you're familiar with CSS grid. But it doesn't really matter. The important part is that you understand how far you can go with Figma and you don't see it as a substitute to good conversation with development. You can get much closer, but in the end, you're going to notice that the browser is still more powerful and it is completely fine. So it's not about you having to understand everything and fixing it for development. It's more about you getting a little closer, having more tools, and then development is still going to take over. I wrote, as I said, we have limited time, this article. It's a free article. And this is all about, let me actually just click into that one. This is all about this if you want to know the details. So here I'm comparing, I'm showing you exactly what fractional units are. You also have a little bit of a code pen. So even as a designer, I'd really encourage you to really just try out and play with the real CSS grid to understand how all of that works. And then here you have a more detailed comparison between code and Figma. And I would strongly recommend that maybe you even sit down with your development team and have a look so you can use this feature well. But the key thing that I want you to go away with from today is this one here, that this grid, as you know it, is not the grid that you're dealing with this new feature. You're dealing with something that's much closer to CSS. So go away from the columns in your head and go into this coordinate system and this chessboard-like grid. Okay, so nesting and more. So I want to show you a few things in the real Figma grid. So we're going to do that for another 5 minutes, and then the other features we're going to run through a little faster. So I want to run through cells, gap and margin, span, rearrange, align, ignore grid, and units. So let's do this. So here we have a really simple grid. And you can see that how this works is you can simply drag this in here. And then you can span, just as you saw in the real CSS grid. So you can span across different cells. I always here's a few shortcuts as well. So let's have a look, because what we can do is we can overlap. So if we want to bring this forward and backward, then we can use our brackets here. Quite handy. So this is the cells that are created by the time you create your grid, and you can control them over here. Then we have our gap and our margin. And notice, and Figma gave a really nice explanation in their demo, while you cannot control them on the canvas because it got way too messy when they're small and rearranging. So if you want to change that, you have to change the gap over here. You can change the horizontal and vertical ones independently, but it's obviously going to be all the same gap for everything. And you can change the outer padding and the outer margin. So this is like sort of around your grid, basically. So we have that. We have the span, we have the grid, the margin, the cells. The rearrangement is pretty straightforward. You can literally just drag your elements around the canvas. And then you can also see that a lot of the time, if you have more, it will just sort of create new cells, and you can just drag them however you want them. The aligning, actually, this was something that's very obvious, but it's something I didn't understand in the beginning. So you might also be tripping over this one. So let's say we have this, but you want to align it to this edge, but you want to have it it's something that has a specific size. You simply use your alignment tools up here. And then you can choose, and it's always going to choose the last cell area. So you can choose from where you want to align it, or even if you want to align it in the center. Let's actually check what happens if I center it. So then you have it in the center of a cell. So don't forget your alignment tools up here. Even though they're not close to this one here, they're still really handy. Ignore grid. So let's say you're having something like this. I want to add this little bubble, and I want to add it on here or on here. But whenever I do, it would just sit in a cell. So if I wanted to be draggable around, actually just it did it because it's fill, but we can actually leave it like this. Then there is this little icon up here, quite hidden, that's called Ignore Auto Layout. If you click this, it's taken out of the flow of your auto layout, and you can now just position this by itself. So let's say we want to have this over here, and then you can use your constraints to set it to a side. You see these little things here that what's a bit annoying is I would expect it actually to be sticking the constraints inside of this cell, but it's sticking it to the edge of the grid. And if you're now resizing, you can see that this is sort of independent from the rest of the grid. So you can take things out of this flow. So units, we also do have units. So what we have is if you go over here, we only have 2 units, unfortunately. So we have auto. And if you click on it, actually, let's pretend we're having a little sidebar here. Do this. So let's create like a little sidebar. Get rid of this. And we want this to actually always stay, how big it, what's the size now? Let's say we want to have it always 300, and the rest we want to keep flexible. So you can see the rest of the cells are set to auto. Then this is going to stay fixed, and the rest is going to work. Like this. And you can choose any of these columns to be fixed. You just have to put in a fixed value, and this is rows, columns, whatever you want. Now, if we look at this at def mode, then you can see that what happens here is so this is the notation of CSS Grid, if you familiarize. And you can see there's a unit called 1FR, and that means a fraction. So before it was it was 4 times 1 fraction. And this is a big difference between from grid as we have it now to CSS Grid. Because in CSS Grid, you could change the fraction. You could say, this here, I want to take up 2 fractions and 1 fraction, so you can mix and match this. In Figma currently, so if you're having this one set to auto, you can see that it only does, wait, let me check how it's, here you can see that the one we put in with 300, it's going to put a fixed value, and then the rest, you can see it's always 1FR, and then we set another one to 200, so it puts a fixed value. So it's not the most beautiful notations, probably for the developers amongst you. But it's currently what we have. However, this is still in beta. This just came out. So this is a big, big topic. And I would expect that we see more flexible units here, hopefully soon. So this is the only 2 things we can do, a fixed value, or you set it to auto. If you want to go back to auto, then all you have to do is, oh, sorry, I'm still in def mode. Go back here, and then you just type in auto, and then you're back at auto, and it will now behave like this again. So that's the 2 options you have to set this up. It becomes interesting we only had very simple designs here. So it becomes interesting when you start nesting. And this is what I meant here with, you have to just play with it. You have to familiarize with these ideas. When do I use this and when do I use this? So your components, if you have existing design, they're probably going to be set up with the old auto layout, which is Flexbox anyways, and that's just fine. So you can see here, I made a design, and then I am just using, let's just put these out here. And then what I did here, I'm just putting in instances, and I can literally just sort of like drag them to the right size. And now I can add these cards in here. And so these are all set up with 1-dimensional auto layout, and I can just add them in here. But it would also work the other way around. So you can really mix and match that however you want it. You can also nest grids. So here you can see what I did is I'm having a very simple layout, just an overall layout with a sidebar, and this one here in the center. And here, so I have another instance. So I'm just adding this in here. So this is my sidebar, and I fixed that sidebar. And then I have just some layout. I don't even know how I set it up. I set this up as another grid. I could set this up as another flexbox design. And I have more nested elements in here, and I can drop it in here. So it's a really nice way to control your overall layout, and then you can really choose what you want to do inside. And what's really nice is that this is now automatically keeping this one fixed, and this element here, for example, responds with the changing size. Okay, I'm going to go through the rest because we have half an hour, and then I'll go through questions. By the way, I don't look at the chat for now, so put them rather in the Google Doc where I'm going to look, because the chat is sometimes a bit, you can speak amongst yourselves. So draw is another big one. Now I have to say, as much as I feel at home with this sort of stuff, I am not a big illustrator, so I'm really sorry if my stuff is gonna not look as pretty as probably your designs, but I want to run you through some features and also some hidden stuff that I really enjoyed about this. So what happens with draw is it's down here, so we see it here. And it was really funny because I had a chat with someone at Figma at Config, and I asked them, how do you design the new UI in a Figma UI? And they said what they do is they keep one at dark mode and then they have the design at light mode, because I already find this here confusing. So I can just imagine how tricky that is to design the new software in the old software of your software. So draw, that is happening down here. You see this little thing and you can switch it on. So let's actually go to a little more neutral canvas. And then you're getting these new brushes. So you can switch between these two brushes and you can see the square and all of that, the text, that is all the same. So the main thing to focus on that's new is this brush set here. There is some shortcuts. So it's P, B, and upward and P. And then you can, for example, let's press B, then you can see that it jumps up and it's already going to give you some options about that. And P, the same here, right? So that is how you can access them quickly. So what's really great what's the difference now with Draw to use them? So you can make quite advanced graphics, like going more into an Illustrator direction. You can make icons. So if you're into icon design, you have much better control. As I said, I'm not an icon designer, but I've seen people being very happy about that. You can just control the vectors much better. And then you have nice little visual effects, which I also want to show you for your illustrations. So let's have a look. Let's first jump to the brush. So we're going to use this middle one here, the brush. And you're going to get this menu. So there's some really nice preset brushes. Let's just draw this heart here again. And also I have to say, it really makes a difference. It's really much nicer to control. Pick a color so we can see it. So it's really much nicer to control because it sort of smoothes out the edges for you. So what you can do, you select the brush, you draw the shape, and then what you can do, you can select a stroke. So you select your element, and then you can still go back to your menu and you can change. Sorry, you do it over here. I'm having some double. Draw this white one here before. Sorry, you have to select it and you see it over here in your menu once you drew it. And then from your menu, you can just draw any other brush stroke. And you also see you're getting more options like the weight, the positioning. So you can like just control it a little better over here. If you want to edit it, then you double click and then you're getting these nice little things. So this one here should give you a little better control. If it smoothens it out, you get better handles and things like that. As I said, I'm not going to draw because it's very embarrassing when I draw things. You have this little bucket, so you can just like color things really nicely and really quickly. And there is some more options. So if I Can Design Illustration is yours, you're surely going to be happy about these. Brush settings, we can also change them. So actually, let's get rid of this. Let's select this. And then if we see here the brush settings, there is this little advanced stroke settings. And then you can see the dynamics here. And then you can also change your stroke and alter all of this to your liking. You can also create your own brush design. So you can just draw any stroke or any element the way you want it. And then what you have to do is you right click and then you can say, where is it? Save as, where is it? We use mask. I'm sure you're all seeing it while I'm looking for it and I don't see it. No, or did I already create it? Let me just create a new one. Maybe I already created it, or maybe I just don't see it. So this is my new stroke. I select it, right click, and create stroke, stretch brush. And now if we're selecting it, so we just select any element, and then you can use this little drop down here as well. Brush strokes. I find that a little tedious actually, but hidden. And now we have our new element and you can add it. I'm always having this that I have to bump up the weight quite a bit. And then you can see we're getting our stroke and then you can save your own strokes. You can alter them and you can work with these strokes. Now we'll come to the part that I actually really like, and this is fills and effects. And this is something actually that annoyed me a lot to do, and this is much easier now. I'm using to sample these Pablo Stanley's really, really lovely illustrations. They're free on the community. There's a little link. They're called Humans, and they're really great. He does really great illustrations in general. You can use them. They're free to use on the community. So what we want to do is we want to select a layer to fill. So you can see here I already did some stuff. So let's say we want to fill this one. So I want to fill this. Let me go into this body. So this part here, I have to see the fill. So this upper layer, it wouldn't work because the fill is happening down here. You have to make sure you find the fill menu. You click on here. You can also use the little drop down, but probably when you're starting, it's a little more intuitive to click on it. And then you see a new icon here that's called pattern. You select that, and then you select a source, and you can just select anything on your screen. And then you're getting this as an input. And the cool thing is you can make it smaller or larger. So you can set this up here. And if you're altering that, it's going to live adjust to all of this. So really lovely stuff. And then we're going to fill the same one in here. Let's select the source, and then we have that as well. Actually, that is something I want to check if I can copy the same settings over here. Now let's say I want to have this as a jeans. So I'm going to select this part here. Again, make sure it's where the fill is, fill menu, and then I can also select images, and I can add in real texture. So this is really, really nice. And so you can really give some life to your illustrations. The other thing that it has is effects. So that was usually just drop shadow and things like that. So let's have a look at these new effects. Let's drop them down here. So you have the inner shadow, outer shadow. I'm not going to do that because we had that before. They improved the blur a little bit. And they also have a progressive blur, which is really nice. So you can choose from where you start blurring. And as you can see, this goes really nice when you have like sort of a background thing. So that's really cool. And then what else do we have? Let me just go back here. We have the background blur. So this is like if I added this for you on here, then you can see that it sort of blurs the background. And what's really nice is you can also do a progressive background blur. So you're having this happening here, really lovely. And what else did we have? We had some texture as well, if I remember correctly. So we have texture. So you can set this up nicely and make them a little more, and really play with it. And there were some really great examples during config. And also what I really like is the noise. So you can add some noise, so you can give it like sort of just a little more depth. And you can obviously choose your entire illustration or just elements of your illustration to add some noise. So really nice little stuff to play around with. I added here, this is the file that the Figma community made. If you want to know more about illustration and try, and you can see here there's some beautiful examples from the Figma team where they were using this. So if you're into illustrations, then you can really, really go very far with Figma now, and probably don't even need to jump over to Illustrator as this is being developed further. Okay, so the last little thing, doing well in time, what I want to show you is sites. I am very excited about sites. So for sites to work, I need to jump into another team. Because you need to be on a pro team in order to see sites. So let me just show you in case you haven't played with this yet. This should be available to everyone actually already. So if you're in your account, then to create, you click on create, and then you see sites. You see if you already have it, make. So it's in beta, when you close beta, and so you see all of these. And if you click on sites, then what it's going to do, it is just going to create this canvas for you that looks very similar to the Figma design canvas, but it's a little different. And there's fantastic templates that you can play with. So if you click on a template, you can preview it, you can use template, and then you can just like play with it. I did play with some templates. I have to say I'm not 100% there with all of them. I'm going to show you why. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our own template. So this should be this one. Oh, and by the way, I am creating a little template myself right now. So there's a little preview here. So this is going to be a little drag and drop thing to build your own portfolio and really, really quickly build a website. So you have control of your typography and your colors and all of that. And I'm going to have like different components. So you can literally just put your website together really quickly, and you can alter all of this, change all the colors, make it all yours. So I'm currently working on this. If you're interested, sign up for the newsletter. It's going to be a free template for you to use and publish. But I want to show you actually how that works today rather than going into design. So what I did is I started from a blank page. I just added some notes for us here. And when you start with a blank page, what you see is this. You see a desktop and a mobile, and you can add more. For example, you could add a tablet as well, which I would recommend. But for simplicity, we'll just keep it at this. Now, a little name on the wording, because I am not a big fan of calling things desktop and mobile, because the space is so large for, you know, what a tablet size is, what a desktop size is, what a laptop size is. So I'd rather would always strongly advocate to have breakpoints as breakpoints and have your design just work nicely all over those breakpoints, rather than thinking that this is a mobile and this is a computer and this is a tablet. Figma named it like this. You can always rename it. So you can always, I prefer having this called large and having this called small, for example. They also start with the desktop at the primary. You can change this to your liking. I will probably start with the mobile, but it's up to you. It also depends highly on your project. I'm going to keep it like this default for, now, so that you can also play with it better. Actually, I have to say that this one here is not in the files. I actually don't even know if I can share this on, because you can't share this to the community yet. Anyways, we're starting from 0. So you should be able to reconstruct this, and these nodes here are in your file. So you can have templates, breakpoints, different devices. And so let's actually start building. So let's start with something that's very cool, which is a responsive component. So if you're used to working with components, then you know that there is a component set, and you have 2 variants. And in the past courses, I always explained that I would set up my components like this. I would have a main component, and then I would have a one for different breakpoints. But you had to always do this manually. So the cool thing here now is, if I have my components here, and you can see I named them, actually, I think I can make the UI a little bigger, so hopefully you can see this a little better. So I named them desktop, and I named them mobile, and I named them the name of this. If I would rename these to small and large, then I would just change the naming as well. So this is my navigation desktop. And if I now pick the desktop and I drop it on here, you can see that it automatically copied the corresponding one. So really, really cool stuff. And I'm really hoping that we will see this in the design files, but from config, it sounded a bit like this. So what we're going to do now is let's fill the container. And you see that when I do this, it does the same for my mobile. So it always follows it unless I overwrite it, which is really nice. We also have blocks. So let's say that I'm like, oh, I'm a bit lazy. I built this stuff, but actually I want to use stuff that someone else built for me. I need it really quickly. Then you have over here, you have entire pages that you can use. You have elements like navigation, heroes. So let's say we want to use this one. So I just drop it on here, and you can see that Figma already built this for you in the background. So you have these ones set up here, and they're really cool. So you can use these preset things that you can already build a website with. They're not perfect, but there's pretty good stuff already. If we want to preview our website now, then we can simply click here, and then we're getting this little preview, and then we can actually resize. And the more breakpoints we set up, the more we would see this. You can see your live website happening here, which is pretty nice. So up here, you would have your different breakpoints that Figma does for you. So we go back. You can also publish. We're not publishing today, but it is up here. So if you select this, actually, where did my publish button go? Yeah, so you can click on publish, and then you can set this up. You can connect this with your own domain, and you can publish your website pretty quickly here with Figma. You can set up different things. like the site name, the description, so SEO settings, all of these things. There has been a huge talk and complaint about online about accessibility, to not be using this. I reached out to Figma and I asked them about this before I showed you. There is a page. Where did I copy this? Let's have a look here. Yeah, I copied it here into your documents. They gave me a really great answer. They have their whole team on this. They're very much aware that this was something they messed up a little bit. So in the background, this is their priority to working on. You can follow on this link here, everything that they're doing. You can leave comments if there is more accessibility things, but this is now the priority. This is being solved. Remember that this is in beta, so it's not a finished product yet. And so this is actively being worked on. It's not completely solved yet. On this link here, you can see all the things they're already solved. And I think there's a list of things they're actively working on. So you can have a look at this, but this is something that's being addressed right now in case you're worrying about this. So we have in the publish, we have the multi-edit. So the multi-edit basically means that if I have something here, if I say, hello, how are you? I am fine. Then you can see that this is happening in both pages unless you wanted. You could now override this. Sorry, I think you could. Let me check this out. You should be able to just change it here. But you generally have the same content happening on both sides. If you would just want to change like so something like a margin or padding, then you could just do that, override it, and then you can see this is now only happening here, and now this is going to be stuck here, and it's sort of decoupling from your main component over here. What else do we want to do? We want to embed some stuff. This is actually also really cool. So here you have embeds, and they're working on more embeds. Let's actually just embed a YouTube video. So we're having a little YouTube video here. I think I have a copy of a Smashing Meats we did. So I select this, I put this in here, I put the link, and it's now going to just fetch the video. Let's see if it plays. It didn't play. See, I'm having a bit of a problem. So it would open it like this, but I am still having a problem that it directly plays in the page. I hope this is something fixed, or it's at least something I'm going to mention. But you can see that it's pulling in the video nicely, and they're also working on more embeds. Currently, you have Google Maps, and they're going to be working on that. You can really add your own code blocks in here. So another thing that we want to do is auto layout is now a must, because you probably don't want to use all of these ready-made elements. You probably want to start designing a little bit. So the cool thing is that you can design your entire page in your Figma design, just as you knew it. Actually, you can design it here as well, but you probably want to stay in your Figma design file. And then what you can do is you can choose your libraries. And so you can add a library just as you had from before. I'm not adding this because the library I'm working on is in a different team, because this is a pro team, the other is an edu team. You're not going to have that issue. And you can add your libraries, and then you can just consume all of your components. But what I did is I added an instance here. You can see here that if I click on here, that the component that lives on another page. But I have my instance here, so this is what it would look like as well if you import something. And what I want to do now is I want to add this to a grid. So I want to maybe set up my design out here. And now I want to use the stuff that we had before. So maybe I want to have, let's say, 3 cards in a row like this. I want to add a little bit of padding here and a little bit over here. Maybe a bit of margin, who knows, not sure. By the way, you can use obviously variables to keep that all aligned. And so now I'm going to add instances. So I'm going to add this one. 1, 2, 3, and then I have actually, let me put this newsletter thing in here. I want to span that over 2 fields, and I have some images here, so I'm just going to copy them, and I'm going to place them in here actually. Again, if you're saying, oh, I don't know how to do all of that, this is better explained in a course. I would just assume that you know how to copy these things and set these things up. So now we have our grid, and the cool thing is now this is responsive. So if we add this in here and we understand how responsiveness works, now you see this is like in the small one here. So now we're going to say fill container, So now we have it sitting in here. But now over here, you can see that I could either now set up a component for this, and I could create, as I did with my navigation, 2 versions. But I can also, if it's just a one-off, I can overwrite this here. I have to say that this is a little tedious, and it's not the way that I like working with it. So what I've seen in the demos, what people do is they just go like this. And that would work, but I have to say, I think, and developers in the room or in the session, feel free to disagree with me. I would want to have something like this. So I would just want to go like this, and you have to get rid of all of them and then put them back in, which is a bit annoying. So I would probably want this. And again, this is something I don't like about the grid yet, and I hope that's going to be solved soon. It doesn't stick. I wanted to stick an auto stick to the size of my element. It doesn't do that. So what I can do now, I can add those here back in. And so I can just create it like this. So if I now would have a look, you can see it's here. Let's hope it works. And you can see it works nicely. Jumps a little too early to this breakpoint, so I would probably want to change the breakpoints a little bit. And the important part here, however, is that this will only work if you understand your auto layout. So if you want to move away from ready-made stuff, you really need to understand auto layout, and you really need to dig in, and then you can create fantastic websites. Again, there is still problems. The code isn't very clean yet and stuff. It is in development. But think about how fast you can publish a website here, and knowing the speed of Figma, how this is going to evolve really, really well. So auto layout is a must. Libraries I showed you. Yes, subpages and interaction. So let's say that's our page, and then we want a subpage. You can simply pull out another one, or you can add here another page. Click on another page, and you can see it has a / and page. You can then rename this. So for example, I don't know, you can call it / blog or whatever you want to call it. And we could now get rid of these elements, and we can set up our new page. So let's just like get out some ready-made blocks from here. Say, I don't know, we're having this one in here. You can see that this would now fill up automatically. And then what we can do now, say this one here is our about. So I can overwrite this here. I can make this bold here. And then this one here is our work page. We can go to interactions just as we know it from Figma. And then we have an interaction over here to blog. And if we click back on about, we go back over here. Oh, I haven't set up a mobile menu, but we can also do that. We would set this up the same way with our interactions opening up once we click here. And we also have great little things like if we have this one, then in interactions, you can see here besides links, you can add interactions. And there's lots of them, hover, whatever. So let's do play. Let's have this one here as a typewriter. And then let's say, I don't know, you wouldn't do that in real life. But for our example, let's just have these ones here. And let's have them draggable anywhere. Okay, so let's have a look what that looks like. So you can see my typewriter is working nicely. Put this in. I can drag those around. We can make really nice elements. Use it, please, in a place where it's sensible. It's definitely not sensible here. And then I can click on work, and then I jump to work, and I can click back on about, and I can literally just hit publish, and then our website is live. What's coming, what's in the pipeline is code layers. So I think they're probably going to happen here. So that everything is powered by code. So you can add your own little code layers in here. There is, it's going to link heavily with Figma Make. So you can prompt ideas. So you can prompt entire sites. You could prompt elements of a page. There's a CMS, which I think is the most interesting one. So this, I think it's going to be this one here. It's coming soon. So you can create this as a designer, and then you could add these things to the CMS, like articles and anything that can be overwritten. And so you can have someone just looking after the copy. You can bind date into design. Data, sorry, little typo. I was wondering the date. So you can add data. So you can show graphs with real data, real numbers from your database. That's also going to be happening. And you do need a pro and enterprise plan, however, to use it. It's currently not available on a free plan. Okay, great. 5 to 7. feel free to switch on your microphones, and I'm going to jump into the chat and into your questions. And we're going to find out if you have any doubts. Oh, here we go. Actually, is there anything, Amanda, is there anything I missed in the chat? Probably lots. I'm going to go first through the questions. If there's anything really important in the chat there, please let me know. Yeah, someone's asking if there's a video available. Can someone, sorry, I'm keep on asking Amanda. I'm not supposed to ask Amanda. I'm supposed to ask Emma. Sorry, Emma.
Yes, the
There's got to
video.
be a video, right?
Yes. Yep. It'll be in the Google Doc. There will be a link.
Yeah, so you can watch that like in your own time and jump back to the file in your own time. Okay, so let's takeaways. Let's look at the questions. Is there a way to multi-edit text wrap around icons, components, or elements using the new grid feature? Yeah, there is generally a multi-edit. I'm not sure if I can show you in this file. Let's actually see if I have similar elements. Maybe it works here. So if you select anything, doesn't work here because I'm sorry, I haven't set it up for that. You have a little thingy up there, and there is a multi-select. I'm sorry, I have no example where I can show you this really well now here, but there is a multi-select for everything pretty much in Figma where you can, if you have similar elements, and it's usually if you're working with instances, should be here. Why is it not happening here? There's an instance. Oh, because I'm in draw maybe. Let me check. So here, yeah, it's up here. It did move. Here, select matching layers. And if you have it a little more organized than me, then usually it's going to give you the matching layers and then you can edit it. Multi-text auto layer. How do you hack content in a grid? So yeah, that doesn't work yet. That I mentioned that a little later on. That's what I find quite annoying. So I think what you're referring to is if you have something like this, if I just take this out, then what you probably want is it all looks great, and then you work on your own design, and then you have something like they're like this, right? They're not, and then suddenly you're like, I want this to no, I want this to hug. I want the grid to hug whatever I give it, and that's currently not working. Because if I set it to auto, then what it does, it's just going to use up the available space in my sort of parent element. So that is hopefully something that is coming soon. I also find that a little irritating. Is absolute position in Figma now equivalent to, yeah, it's ignore auto layout. It used to be called ignore auto layout, and then no, absolute position if it's equivalent. Oh, I actually don't know. I think there's a little more to absolute position still. You could have a look what's happening in def mode with this. Are there any improvements to draggable items in the way to fridge magnets and drag items individually? Current, I can only drag one item at a time. You'd like to be able to drag anything at a time. So this is about grid, right? It's not about size. So you can select multi-elements and you can actually drag them at the same time if that's what you're after. Can you change the cursor to a more precise one when in draw mode? I'm not a fan of the giant brush one. I don't think so, but you could ask. By the way, there is a Discord channel, especially if you, I think they opened it for all of these things. So you can join that. Anyone can join that and give feedback. And this was also a place where the accessibility issue was heavily raised and they react to it really quickly. So if you're having things like that, feel free to join that Figma Discord and comment. The Figma advocates are there, and it's not a void. Like people really listen to it. So if companies start using AI agents now, Replit may do just about anything. What's the point of spending time and resource still learning and doing UX UI design? I'm more philosophical here. By hand in Figma, is there a future of UX? I do not know that. Or should we all start thinking about doing something else instead? No, actually, I think there's a huge future for that because you're going to have Figma Make as well, right? So we're going to have that. So that's like it's the equivalent to Replit, I would say. And it's all going to be feeding in there. And actually, I've been working with these things and playing around with them a bit. And I find what's really good with the AI tools is that it's giving you really fast things, fast outputs. And it's hopefully going to take away all the pain that we have with auto layout and grids. You still have to make the decisions right now. And especially for design, I find that the only thing at this moment of time, I don't know what's happening in a year or two. At this moment of time, the only thing they do really badly is design decisions and aesthetics. So this is what you're here for, and you can just work faster in a smaller team. But that is just my opinion. Feel free to disagree. So, were there any announcement at Config about Figma's future development since it has been purchased by Adobe? It has not been purchased by Adobe. That deal was stopped last year by the EU. It was too big of a deal. There is some rumors around online about IPOs, but I do not know. They do not ask me, and I do not have shares. I wish I did, and I wish they would ask me, but the future of Figma is, as you can see, very much in Figma's hands, as it looks like. And this is also why I think they're just trying to build this like one platform where you're going to have all of these tools aligning. So you don't have to jump into Replit, you don't have to jump into Framer, you can do it all in Figma. But again, I'm not working for Figma, so this is just what I see from the development of their tools. Can you add interactive prototypes for Figma sites? Yeah, as you can see, you can add your full prototyping. So, very good question. I think what you mean is, can you embed a prototype in here? Actually, why don't we just try to do that? Let me just jump over here and let's jump to, sorry, my files. You're going to see how messy my files are when I always pretend they're clean. So let's have a look. This is some files from the course. Let's look at the prototyping course. And let's actually just pick one up. Where do we have a nice little prototype that we could use? Let's take this one here over. And let's have a look what happens. So what this prototype does, no, I can't preview it here. So yeah, I have no clue what's going to happen, by the way, because I have never done this. So I am thinking if I would need to turn this into a, let's see. Actually, that's a very good question, and I'm going to be playing with this. Let me just do this quick thing here, whether we can get this to run. I'll put it into the circle now. So put it in here. Oh, it's probably going to look awful, but let's just see what's going to happen. We're probably just going to see a part of it. So this should just start running on its own. No, it doesn't. But I'm actually, very good question. I'm very intrigued to play with this because it should happen. I'm not sure what this is. So yeah, I don't know about this. I'm really sorry. My expertise stops here. I have an educational account and sites is still not showing up. Yes, there is no sites in an educational account. You will need to get a paid account. That is also why you cannot invite lots of people into an edu account, or if you're a student, then you also don't have it. However, my profile, it says my account should allow access to sites. No, it doesn't. You should know if they're not starting beta with education. I'm not sure if there's nothing planned. You can also, again, in the Discord, on Twitter, ask them about it. I would also love to have it in edu. So just politely voice your opinion about it. And that's the best way to get it. But currently, yeah, if you have an educational account, you're not going to be able to use sites. When publishing a site, where and who is hosting the site? Yeah, also good question. I think you will probably buy your domain with whomever you want. And then that's true. I think it will probably be Figma, but I actually do not know. Good question. Can you share some thoughts around recommending universal breakpoints? So yeah, there is a really great article by Brett Frost about that. So let me just get this for you, type this in. So Brett Frost breakpoints. So this article here, I'm going to add it in the chat. He has really, really fantastic stuff on that. And it also explains, I think it should also be in here, why you should get away from this. This is a mobile, this is a tablet. So let me just, where is the chat? Let me just put this in here. So I would recommend that if you're interested in that you have a look at Brad's articles. He explains it really nicely. Oh yeah, let's put it in here as well. How would you constrain the ratio of an image. Yeah, someone was really nice and added this. This was recently added. So you can do this in Figma. Let me just show you again. So it's a bit in the context of the UI. So if you want to have the ratio, you can have this little thing here. This is not working because this is now an instance, so I can't do it. But what you can do is you have this, you see this little symbol everywhere and it melts together your height and your width. And this is how you can do this. This was just came out, I think, a month or two ago before config. Okay, great. So here we have some, nice. Thank you for all the things. So I'm going to go through the chat. Does anybody have any questions? Otherwise, feel free to switch on your microphone. Also, that I know if you're missing anything, if you liked it, if you hated it, you're also allowed to say it. Let me know. Anybody wants to say anything? No, then I'm just going to read through your messages quickly here before I say goodbye. Yes, someone said I tried to use Figma Grid yesterday. Of any designers hired, even after, I'd love to hear if other designers have tried, even trying Figma's community file. I'm struggled to find the best way to use it. So yeah, so I would really recommend. I personally prefer still using, but I mean, if you're talking about tables and things, then it's always a bit like big discussion which one you're going to use. So I think you just have to be really comfortable with auto layout, like the old way of auto layout, the one dimensions, in order to really understand it. And it's the trickiest feature, I would say, in Figma. So be kind with yourself. It's going to take a moment to wrap your head around it.
Thank you, Christine. I'm the one that wrote that question,
Yeah,
and
sure.
actually, I had old tables that are in all layout, and
Mm-hmm.
but it's in a weird having nested elements that are Salesforce that allows you to have like a caret, and then it opens up to different rows. And I was trying to see, okay, can I organize this a little bit better with grid? And while it worked in some areas, what I've noticed is when I try to reorder the header row, just as an
Mm,
example, everything got pushed down a
yeah.
one, like the columns will be the same. But if I try to move the first cell to the third cell, the
You
first
have to sort
cell
of
will
move
end
it
up
out,
empty.
right? And then get
Yeah,
it.
and then
Yeah.
everything is all out of place. And I wondered if I'm doing something wrong or is that just how it is
No, it's
right
just
now?
how it is right now. And I think it's also, but it's a common pain point. So I think it's something that's the typical stuff that's gonna be fixed, right, with the next release. But yeah, that's not you. That is just really annoying that it goes to the next row. But what's also really good, if you have an element like this, I would also ask your development team, like, how are you gonna set this up? Because it's very interesting to see whether they would use Flexbox or CSS Grid. And if you look at with them at it, then they can tell you how they, because they're very used to looking at these things in a very different structured way that we designers don't usually do. So that's always really great. And then you can also see where there's limitations. Maybe they have like certain units that you don't have yet. But I would sit down with the dev team and just figure out these more complex components together with them. It's going to help you later to align better, but it's also going to help you to get into the habit of how to use this much better.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. My kind, more layout gradually was suitable. Yeah, so like date pickers and stuff people used, but I had to join it. Yeah, the resources are shared if you in the Google Doc. Everything is in there. Figma file. So yeah, the Figma file. So yeah, there's someone also posted something to play with CSS Grid. Yeah, if you jump into the article that I wrote, it's very visual, so it uses the similar visuals like this. In your file, there's the link, and then there is also some CSS stuff. And I would really highly recommend that you play with the CSS because then suddenly it's not that difficult, and you suddenly it really snaps in your head why these things work the way they do. The inline text wrap with custom icon component situation. Be able to conquer the inline text wrap. I cannot help you there. My head is not processing the sentence. I'm sorry. Da, da, da. It's 10 minutes late. We have the Google Doc. Someone's excited about Phil. I'm so excited about Phil and pattern, which is funny. And yeah, there are a lot of jokes about it. Oh yeah, you can do text on, I didn't show that. You can do text on a circle now, which people were also really excited about. And there were a lot of memes about that online. But it's true, we couldn't do that before. So yeah, custom domains should work with Figma sites, but I have not personally tried it. Hope I'm not telling you something wrong here. The progressive blur, also a happy feature. Also, the internets are not impressed with the code under the code. Yeah. So Figma sites, the code isn't perfect yet. There is problems with it. It's beta. It's a starting point. But I think if someone pushes it further, then it's definitely Figma, and it has a great usability once you have everything set up in your Figma file. But also feel free if you say I prefer Framer or I personally right now still hand code it with Cursor when it goes out. So, you can have a look how all of this develops. Yeah, so big accessibility issues, absolutely, they're there. There's a lot online, but they are being addressed. And I can guarantee you, when I asked them about it, I got 3 people answering me right away in the chat with this long things, pointing out things, and being very, very concerned about it at Figma. So it is something that I, as I said, not working for Figma, see being addressed. Is that subscribed? Yeah, you don't have another platform, which I also love. More licensing, I would love that as well. Okay, great. So yeah, someone's saying they're teaching. So yeah, this is great. Is they're going to be excited about Figma sites. The only problem is that it's not in Edu, but I hope we will get it in Edu accounts. I also hope, I think it would be very valuable. Okay, someone's recommending Framer. Yeah, so Framer, basically you can say that this is like Figma trying to catch up with Framer, and Framer is really, really good as well. So it's you can use any tool as you wish. Okay, great. So make, if somebody, I'm going to give you, before we close, I think there is stuff. Those of you who still have time, I'm going to give you a 1-second preview to make if you don't have access yet, and then we call it a day. Hope that's fine. Smashing team, if I'm going over time, I'm sorry. You can tell me, but I think we just have 1 second to go to jump into this. Oh, actually, we should have done it earlier because it might take a minute to render. Does anybody wants to put a prompt in the chat, and I just pop it in here and we'll see what happens. Give me a short, simple prompt. Yeah, so the link on the auto layout session, while one of you writes a prompt for me, please. So if you go to Moo Learning, if you just want auto layout, then you can go here on video classes. And then here you can see the auto layout session. So there is a whole thing about auto layout, or there is the beginner's course. There is a short version of auto layout, or I have also mastering CSS layout for CSS. So there's all in there. There's more container queries, typography, and all of that. If you want that, also in workshops and talks, you're finding our next upcoming workshop with Smashing. And if you subscribe to the newsletter, you always find the latest free features. Okay, so let's have a look. Does anybody write a prompt for me? No prompts. I'm gonna write my own prompt then if nobody gives me a prompt. Okay, so how it works with make, same as with sites. You go to make. If you use Replit, it looks very familiar. You can drag in your Figma designs here, or I can just say, make me a site, make me a calculator for, I don't know, how much CO2 I used up this year. I have no idea why it just came into my mind. Let's just see what happens with that. Probably feeling guilty about taking a flight. Let's have a look what's happening. And then you can see here, it shows you exactly what it is doing. It explains you why it is doing what. It is currently, it's writing in React. So you're getting React code. And then you can switch between your code and your preview. And we're just going to let it calculate a little bit in the background. Actually, from Smashing, do you want to say anything before we close off, once we hopefully see a little preview here?
Sure, if you need some time. So a few things to wrap up. If you want a certificate for this workshop, you can email us. I can put the email in the chat. If you have any questions, we have a different email for that. I'll put that in the chat. And I will definitely be sending a link to Christine's latest workshop. That can go in the chat. And yeah, one more thing. The recording will be in the Google Doc. There will be a link so you can see that afterwards. So if you miss something, no worries, it'll still be there for you.
Perfect. And thank you so much for all the love in the chat. This is taking forever. Do I have the permission to stay 1 minute longer? Otherwise I say bye-bye to everyone.
No, you
And
have
those who want
time.
to see, I have time. And then we're just going to look at this code happening here in front of us. And though the programmers can tell us if this is making sense or it doesn't, because I have absolutely no idea. You can see it's doing the work. You can see it's creating what I love. It's creating our components. It's creating our styles, types. It's taking forever. We should have done it in the beginning. Just have this nice little closure.
Christine, may I ask a question?
Yes, sure. This is the perfect moment to ask a question.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we just look at this beauty happening here.
I was wondering, as a UI designer, do you feel a pressure to learn how to code?
I mean, would love, I mean, I do write some front end stuff, so I'm a big fan of coding. I think with this stuff, it's less and less necessary to code. So, for example, I use Cursor a lot. I highly, highly recommend to any designer using Cursor, because what you can do is you can just say, I want to build this and how does it work? And you can use it like sort of an assistant, like talking to you. And so
Mhm.
it's really great because I think you don't need to code, but you need to understand the concept below. And something's happening here. And I also think with these things happening here, what I, for example, digging in right now is React. So to really sort of get into this stuff and understand what's happening, because what you can do then you get your design and then you really understand what's happening in here. And then you can start tweaking these things. And I think we're going to see this code and design melting. So I think it's actually a really great time to be a designer if you understand the principles. I don't think we're at this time anymore where you need to write every line of code yourself
Mm.
before, which stopped us. But I think learn the basics of HTML, CSS, and with these new tools, React, which I'm hopefully going to have a course on soon. So
Mm.
here's our calculator, by the way. So home energy. Oh no. Oh God, it died. You saw it for a brief moment. It was there. It was beautiful. But it didn't want us to show. This is probably the reason why not all of us have it yet. You saw it for a brief moment. Here it goes again. So we can put stuff in here. I don't know what I can do, but you can see it does stuff. Look, I can choose what I use: train, metro, short haul, and then you can set up things. And it's having some problems. And it's definitely not perfect yet. So this one is the latest they brought out. The one they said that it's not finished. It's just getting some feedback. So yeah, I don't expect to ship products with this one. But it's really cool to start playing with these tools, because definitely I think these tools are going to be really big and they're going to be really great for designers to use. So that was it from me. I hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you so much, everyone, for the web developers. Yeah, of course, we still need you. Also, this is for playing around. There is still data security. There's things that need to be done properly. Not everything is a little toy. There is serious data to be looked after and security issues. So, of course, we need our developers still. So, thank you so much. And I hope you see you soon in one of the workshops. Make sure you follow me on all of these channels that you will see here. And I'd love to stay in touch. Thank you so much. Bye bye.